particular film came from your personal experience.
Yes.
So your grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. You went to visit her, and there was this whole other thing going on that no one had told her about her diagnosis.
Yeah, like this happened actually while I was in post-production on my first feature film, and I was working on a screwball comedy, Posthumous, which played here. And as this was happening to me, I thought, well, this is like a real-life screwball. This is why I'm attracted to screwballs, because everything in life is so ridiculous. And so that's how the genesis of the film came about. As it was happening, there were these moments where I was like, this is so sad, but it's so funny. And I don't know how to like handle it, right? Like I don't know whether to laugh or cry. And I had no one to really talk to about it because I was there by myself and my parents, and I didn't really, like Billy in the movie, like have an outlet to really express like how crazy this all was.
But the thing is, I think that might be a little bit difficult for some people to understand. This idea of not telling the truth. Billy struggles with it a lot, this idea of she should know, versus this idea of the family. Like, there is this...
carrying the burden.
Yeah, the family carrying the burden. And the father in your film talks about that idea about in America, it's about the individual. And in China and also in other Asian cultures, it's about the family carrying the burden or being part of the family. Is that something that you sort of deal with in your own, like in dealing with your family or dealing with that sort of duality of, yourself as an American thinking of, and also as the Chinese part of you?
Yeah, absolutely, because my parents immigrated to America so that I could have a better life, and to me, a better life means having the freedom that especially the women in the family didn't have. My mother, my grandmother, where they were always serving somebody, whether it was the family or the country. And so I felt that, part of coming here and having a better life was to have independence and freedom, and that was the risk they took so that I could have those things. But then when it came time for me to take those risks to have that life, they were like, no, go do the safe thing. And so that was always the dichotomy of, why would you have moved here if you didn't want me to go pursue these things that make me happy? And why would we all come here as a family for me to just go do the thing that makes the family happy? And so I think it's an ongoing sort of dilemma.
It's a dilemma for lots of children and parents. I mean, your family wants what they think is the best for you, but you have to find your own way. And I'm curious because you were trained as a classical pianist?
Yes.
And what made you switch to film?
Well, I played piano since I was 4, and I also was a writer. I wrote a lot since a young age, but they're both very solitary art forms, and I didn't want to spend my entire life, even though I liked the work, I didn't want to spend my life being so solitary. I wanted to work with friends, and I wanted to start projects up that I could really track from beginning to end. And so when I discovered film, that was what made me realize I could both incorporate my writing and my music background, but also work with people that I care about and have fun with.
Speaking of people you have fun with, great cast, isn't this? I mean, just absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
And we have to talk about Awkwafina, because if you've seen Ocean's 8, if you've seen Crazy Rich Asians, you see Awkwafina in this film and you're just blown away by her work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what particularly did you see in her that said, this is Billy?
Well, so when her name first came up, we were auditioning a bunch of people, and her name came up, and my producer came up to me, and she was like, have you heard of Awkwafina? Another producer in our office suggested her, and she's reading the script right now, and this was before Crazy Rich Asians, before Ocean's 8, and I didn't really know about her work. I hadn't seen Dude or Neighbors, and so I was like, the girl who did My Vag? Because my brother introduced me. He was like, this girl's super cool. She's like Asian, and she's a girl, and she's like your height, and she does rap. And so I had seen like Green Tea with Margaret Cho and My Vag. And the joke in the office was that we're casting someone to play me, essentially. And that's not how I ultimately directed her. But at the time, as we were auditioning people, it was just on, like, who do you see as me? And so when they suggested Aquafina, I was like, first of all, her name is Aquafina. And second of all, she did my badge. Like, how do you guys see me? Like, I don't understand. And they're like, no, I know she's not the, like, obvious choice, but you should just meet with her. And when I met with her, she told me how her mother, who was Korean, passed away when she was 4, and her father is Chinese, and she was raised by her father's mother, and who we nicknamed Grandma Fina. And so when she sent in a self-tape as well, I saw that she just really embodied the character. There was a sense of understanding deep within her as an American, as somebody who is so innately a New Yorker and an American, someone growing up in Queens, and she studied abroad in Beijing, where she just understood that feeling of being an outsider in a place where everyone looks like you.
And I do have to ask you about your great aunt.
Yeah.
You actually cast your great aunt as the great aunt of Billy,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, I just discovered that. I thought that was so cool. I mean,
Yeah.
how was that to the director? I mean, did you feel like you had to direct, or, I mean, because she has that scene right at the beginning when she receives the diagnosis. I mean, that's some really amazing acting there.
Yeah, she's really wonderful. I wanted to, initially I talked to her, I thought maybe she could play Nai, and she's not an actor, you know, and so she was very difficult for her to play her sister. She would always, like, start giggling, and so then I thought, because I said, you know, well, her sister's much more stern than her, and she's so smiley, and she couldn't get that, like, she couldn't do it. She would just, like, she would start doing it, she would start to giggle, and I would be like, no, Nai doesn't giggle, like, you gotta just yell at me. So then I decided to see if she could just play herself, and we did another audition, and I just said, talk to me about what happened. That's all you have to do, you don't have to act. And she was very, like, self-deprecating and say, but my face is fat, and I'm gonna ruin your movie, and I'm not an actress. And, you know, and her, like, earnestness is what I really wanted to capture, of how hard she worked, you know, to keep the lie and to do all of this for the family, but also that she was always still trying to keep up a good face, you know, and she was the main person behind the lie of trying to make sure everyone had a good time, from her sisters to the rest of the family, and no one ever really talks to her about how are you feeling and what's gonna happen. And she also won't talk about it, right? She'll say, oh, I'm gonna be fine, I'm totally fine. And you see that she's not, and she's really heartbroken. So when we did the audition, she was so good and she was so emotional that we felt so guilty, because my producers actually said, ethically, is it okay that we cast her? Because she's great, but, like, are we just torturing her? You can see the pain in her eyes to talk about all of this. So that was a real question. I had to go and talk to her, and she said, no, it feels like therapy for me. And so in many ways, like, being able to relive the experience and continue to talk about her choices with the actors, with me, helped in a way that was therapeutic. And the actors also got to talk to her anytime they needed to do any kind of background research on their characters. And one thing I really wanted to do was capture the authenticity of my family, and but I also wanted to capture the drama. And so it was such a great thing as a director to have her on set where I could say to her, does this feel real? You know, like, do the dynamics feel real? Does Ty feel like dad right now? Does Diana feel like mom? And she was like, oh, it totally does. And that gave me the confidence also.
Yeah, because you get the sense almost that you're eavesdropping on this family, like a lot through the movie, that you're just sort of been privileged to drop in. You've made this amazing film. You are an Asian director. You're a female director. Both of these things are still kind of rare in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Do you think that progress is being made, or do you think it's getting any easier? Or?
I do. I think that there is more awareness about representation, for sure, especially when things do well in the box office, which is why you have to go support the film when it hits the theaters July 12th. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Hollywood is a business, so it's run by money, and where they think there's money, that's where they're going to continue to support. And I think with the success of Crazy Rich Asians and Black Panther and a lot of films that have more representation that are doing well, there's definitely more of an awareness, but I think that it's still important for us to fight for our stories and to fight to tell them the way we want to tell them, because it wasn't easy. Even doing an independent film like this, I had to constantly fight every step of the way to say, no, I'm not gonna have her hug her daughter at the end and say, I love you. And they're like, but why not? That would feel so nice. It just feels like she's too mean, this and that. And I was like, but you don't come from where I come from. If you made that happen in my real life, then I'll put it in the movie. How about that? And that's what I said to my producer, and he was like, touche, all right, let's keep it. And so I think that it's important to, and we were talking about before this too, like important to fight for all of it, the way that your name is pronounced, the way that our stories are told, the way that we cast our stories, who we hire behind the camera. These are really important things to throw your weight behind when you start to gain any kind of momentum, because it sets the foundation for other filmmakers to do the same. And if we don't fight for every step of the way, it's so easy to just get run over.
Lulu Wang, thank you so very much.
Thank
It's a
you.
really wonderful film. Thank you.